I can't tell you the power of networking and of reaching out to people and just asking for things directly and not beating around the bush. I think that we really underestimate the power of being super direct with someone instead of just kind of like sending in your resume and hoping for the best. Find the side doors, and not, that's not just for starting a business or getting your dream job. Like, find the side doors to everything. Do you want to start a podcast or write a book or anything like that? I mean, I guarantee you your network is going to have a huge power in helping you get there. And so networking and asking direct questions and reaching out and just asking questions to people you look up to, that would be number one.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need any help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com and grab some time with us to chat. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Ali Marchand, close enough?
Yeah.
And Ali grew up in Boulder, Colorado, went to college, I think in Orange County, and studied in business and finance. And then as she was graduating, the professor gave her a scholarship to go to a business conference with them. At the conference, she heard a speaker talking about international inclusivity, if I can not get tongue-tied, and kind of got her interested in that area. Also got an internship in Switzerland and went to work with wealth management company there for a while. Wore a lot of hats. Noticed that there was a big difference in the way that U.S. companies did things versus the way Switzerland companies in Switzerland did that, as far as leveraging technology and the internet and LinkedIn and other aspects. And so started a business in digital marketing in the finance industry in Switzerland, I believe, and it's kind of gone from there. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Ali.
Thanks so much for having me here, Devin. I'm excited.
So I just gave the quick 30-second overview to a much longer journey. So why don't we go back a bit in time and tell us a little bit about growing up in Boulder, going to college, and kind of how your journey got started there?
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, which people tend to refer to as the Boulder bubble. We are very, very outdoorsy and sustainable. And there are a few bad traits too, but I can't remember them. But I became conscious of the environment and sustainability from a very young age. So that was always a value that I kind of held near and dear. From Boulder, I, as you mentioned, went to college in Orange County at Chapman University. And I picked business as probably many people picked business because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in the world. And I thought that would be a good way to start. And I actually emphasized in international business because I had been always curious about traveling the world. I didn't travel much when I was younger. And I studied Spanish from when I was 5 years old. I went to a bilingual elementary school and middle school. And so I just kind of had this yearning for traveling and learning about other cultures.
So now you go to Boulder, Colorado, then you go, and I think if I remember right, it was Orange County where you got your business and finance degree. You're coming out or getting ready to graduate. And I think you mentioned kind of the thing that got your journey started was the professor that gave a scholarship or a grant or whatnot to go to a business conference with them. And that kind of got you going on that part of the journey. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So I was taking some finance classes because I had always been interested in math and numbers, and I knew finance was where you made money, quite honestly. So there was one of my professors announced to the class that he put on an investment conference in Las Vegas, and he wanted some of his students to join, but he knew that none of us had the money for the flights or kind of would do it on our own with our own resources. And so he provided a scholarship just to cover the flights, the conference, the hotel room, and things like that. And I was really interested in it. Not a lot of students, I think, ended up applying for that scholarship, but I was like, hey, a free trip to Vegas, maybe a chance to do some networking. I'm about to graduate, maybe a chance to meet some people on Wall Street. So I was really excited to go. And so he did end up giving me the small scholarship it took to get me over to Las Vegas and into that investment conference. And as you mentioned, once I was there, it was kind of a little bit of everything, a lot of talk about gold, even some talk about blockchain and Bitcoin way early on. This was back in 2016, I think. And then there were, I don't know, it wasn't the best networking environment. And so I kind of gave up a little bit early on, didn't go to all of the talks. But on my way down to the conference, the very last day, I was in the elevator and a man started talking to me, and he saw that I had the same badge for the conference, and he just was curious. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing here? What are you interested in?" Kind of just asking me questions, sparked up a conversation. And I couldn't tell what his accent was, but he was from Switzerland, and he ran a wealth management company for American investors. And so we sparked up a conversation in the elevator, and he was curious to learn more about what I was doing after graduation. And I'm not kidding when I say I got my first internship from a literal elevator pitch. So we ended up talking, and this was the first time that I really learned the lesson. If you don't ask directly for what you want, you have very little chance of getting it. But if you're very outspoken and kind of just ask straight up what you want, then chances are a little bit higher. So I told him that I was really curious about working abroad. I told him that I really was curious about wealth management and finance, and that I loved the outdoors. So Switzerland sounded like a great place. And I followed up with some emails, and I asked directly if there were any opportunity for an internship. Can he please let me know?
Hmm. So now you followed up. I assume, but I'm not going to assume that then you got an internship, or you went over to Switzerland, or you started out. That's where you started out your journey in Switzerland, or kind of what's the end of that story, or the beginning of that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, so a few months later, I think, he didn't have an opportunity right away, but we kept in touch, and he was very keen on just keeping me in the loop. His company and another wealth management company were actually merging in Switzerland, and I was very lucky because they were looking for some extra help. And so a few months after graduation, I got the email that I got the internship and was invited to kind of spend the summer in Switzerland learning from these two merged into one wealth management companies. And that is the start. That was my very first job out of college. And that was kind of like the first place that I had lived abroad, one of the first places that I had even been abroad. And let me tell you, it exceeded expectations, but also just changed my perspective on the world and Americans and everything. I mean, I think that was part of my journey that made me grow the most and the fastest, was getting out of my comfort zone.
Hmm. No, and definitely, it's anytime you go to a different country, different culture, different way of doing things, it always introduces new ideas, new ways of doing things, and also gives you kind of that stark contrast between what you're used to and how, the way that they do that. So now you go in, you get the internship, you work there for a period of time. And I think that after the internship, did it turn into a full-time job? Did you do work for them for a period of time, or where did you go after that?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, I moved to Switzerland with the idea in my mind that I had a summer internship, that I had a 3-month long internship. But after the 3 months, my boss was very happy with me, and he invited me to stay full time on the portfolio management team. And since this was a very small company, I think many people can relate to this. It's very cliche to say that I wore many hats, but in a small company, I think you kind of have to do that. And so for the next 2.5 years, I worked mostly in the portfolio management team, but also talking with clients, getting to know kind of their investment strategy. I learned so much. I even attended client meetings. I was a part of the investment analysis team. So it was a crazy journey, from going from just a 3-month internship and then calling my parents and telling them that I was maybe going to stay there indefinitely. And I'm still here. So pretty big shock to my parents.
Mm. So now you stayed there, you worked for the wealth management, you wear a lot of hats. And then then I think that as we chatted a bit before the podcast, you noticed that there was, because of the different ways that people network and build business and manage things in the US versus Switzerland, they're presenting a bit of an opportunity to, bring a new or different avenue for making connections and networking, everything else into Switzerland that wasn't being done. So did you, as you're doing that, did you start your own company, do it as a side hustle? Is it still a side hustle, the full-time gig, or kind of how did that idea percolate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I should mention that when I was in college, I had a part-time job or kind of an internship with this consulting company in Boulder. And what they did was help business to business tech companies market towards other partners. So it wasn't client facing, it was towards kind of like other businesses. And I didn't do that much there, but I did learn the power of marketing and being online. And I just learned so much from my first boss there and the people that worked there that I had no idea how that was going to impact me later in life. I really didn't think I was going to keep going in that industry, and I didn't see myself like staying at that company. So when I came here to Switzerland, I was so shocked because big tech business to business, like these are the really kind of niche guys in business and technology. They don't think about marketing. They don't think about LinkedIn, but even they kind of knew more about marketing than the finance industry in Switzerland. And I
Hmm.
was shocked when I came here, and, all of these private banks and asset managers and wealth managers, they didn't have a LinkedIn profile. They didn't have, that great of a website. They weren't doing anything online, like nothing, because they all said it was from word of mouth and just trusted clients.
Hmm.
And, at first I was like, okay, it's a different industry. We do like to be private in finance, so maybe you don't want to be online and things like that. But as I stayed there, I kind of realized there was such a big opportunity for these financial professionals and financial companies to take advantage of the online world. And this was before the pandemic. This was before, everybody had to work at home and everybody had to work from online. And I honestly just started talking about this to my colleagues, to some other people that I knew in Switzerland. And, I was making connections in the industry. I've always thought that networking is a very powerful tool for yourself, whether you want to stay at a company or you want to start your own company or you're looking for another job. So I always make it a point to meet new people. And I kept telling them how surprised I was at this, and how different it was from a lot of the companies that I knew of in the United States. And something about Switzerland that is very inherent to the culture here, they are very much more private people. They are kind of less loud. And I think they would say that Americans like brag too much and that they're too loud online.
Hmm.
But I definitely saw a big opportunity in like, okay, at some point, the world of Swiss finance is going to catch up. Why not kind of play a part in doing that? And so I brought it up to the company that I was working for quite a bit. Didn't really gain a lot of traction there. But when someone that I knew mentioned it to his boss, and his boss thought that this was just brilliant. He was like, he wanted me to come in and speak to their team about getting on social media as soon as possible. And I didn't have a company. I didn't have anything with me. I kind of just went in and pitched my ideas. I was like, well, this is what happens when you are online, and these are the possibilities and things like that. And the people in that pitch, it was the CEO of this other company, this other wealth management company, and then someone on the board who had a different company, and then someone who was working part-time who had a different company. So out of this very first meeting, all three people approached me and they were like, "Hey, Allie, how do we start working with you? Are you taking on new clients? Like, what's the 411?" And I was so shocked. I was like, wow, I guess this is really needed. And that just showed me that there was indeed a huge opportunity.
Hmm. So you had that opportunity to, present, give the education. You had people that approached you taking that. Now, did you start to build a business around it? Did you do it as a side hustle? Did you say, hey, I'm out of my old job, I'm going to start this as a new job, and I'm going to make the leap? Or kind of how did you make that transition?
No, it definitely wasn't right away. And to be honest, when I first heard that these three people wanted me to work for them, I was really overwhelmed because marketing wasn't what I majored in. It wasn't really what I did. And I was kind of like telling them how important it was without knowing the technical marketing skills. And so I took a step back, and I have a really good friend that I'm so lucky to have. And she worked in one of the biggest PR and ad firms, or actually it was just an ad firm in Switzerland. And I went over to her house right away and I was like, "Hey, I have a proposal. I have these three clients already. Would you be able to help me with the marketing and just getting them online and getting them up to speed, creating some content for them?" And she said yes. And so I actually started a business with my co-founder, who was my friend, who many people told me never to do, but we can get to that later. And it started definitely as a side hustle for the both of us.
So now it started as a side hustle. Now, kind of bringing us up until today, you're kind of over that journey. Is it still a side hustle? Did you pick up enough clientele or enough business that you turned it into a full-time hustle, or kind of how did that transition go?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Actually, we went full time with the business right before the pandemic. And of course, neither of us knew the world was going to change and have a complete lockdown and this global pandemic affecting every single industry. So yeah, we both went full time with the business right before the pandemic. And my co-founder actually picked up a part-time job so that we could kind of pay our bills, because we weren't bringing in like so many new clients, especially when the pandemic hit. I noticed that a lot of businesses, even the ones that were focused on growth, kind of just took a pause. They took a step back on spending or hiring new partners. And so that was a really interesting start to the business. But so we've been live full time for about a year now, and it's going really great. Both of us are working full time on this new business. It's called Impressum, and the play on words there is that we're out there to teach financial companies how to impress them, which is like the next generation of investors, or more diverse investors, or things like that. And so that's what's going on today.
All right. Well, sounds like it's been a fun journey and a lot of opportunity in the future, which kind of leads me to my next question, which is, so now you guys, that kind of brings us to where you're at today. Looking at the next 6 to 12 months, kind of where do you see things heading? What's the next steps, or what's the next opportunity that lays in front of you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think anyone who owns a business knows that the business has a life of its own almost. Like you can't always foresee where the business goes. I know when we started it, we had really different ideas than we do now. And definitely through the pandemic, we've been really lucky because things are moving towards more digital. They're moving towards, people want things to run when they're not in the office, and people want to be building their business when they don't have to pick up the phone or fly to an in-person meeting or drive to an in-person meeting. So that part is really great. But I think even for ourselves, we noticed the power of an online digital business. And so we're really trying to be kind of more accessible than other marketing agencies. And so we're focusing on trying to produce more kind of digital content, maybe digital courses, learning how to work one-on-one with people that won't break the bank, because I think a lot of times with marketing agencies, you're not very flexible, and it's, really expensive to hire one, and you kind of have to lock down a certain budget in order to start that. And so we are trying to move to a more flexible digital business structure.
Oh, cool. Sounds like a fun and exciting journey ahead of you. So, well, now as we kind of, brings you up to where you're at today, a little bit looking to the future, a good transition to go to the two questions I always ask at the end of each podcast. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
So the worst business decision that I ever made was also a blessing. So it was a biggest mistake and biggest blessing was just starting a business with a really good friend. You don't like a lot of the times I guess I didn't understand the impact and the weight that had on the business, on the friendship, on the business partnership. And so when I heard that advice, like, don't start a business with a friend, you'll regret it, you guys won't end up talking, I definitely understand where everybody is coming from. And it has caused lots of friction with the business because my head is over here, her head is over here. We're thinking different things, but we are trying to raise this company as our child, right? And so I'm very open in saying that we're actually going to kind of like co-founder therapy, co-founder counseling. And I have found that that has helped monumentally, but it was definitely such a big learning process of starting a business with a friend. And I think a lot of people will say when you get friends involved with business, it can result in a little bit of a blowout. So.
Oh, and I think that, I think there's probably some truth to it. And everybody bases, I've seen some businesses that friends get together, they work very well together, they complement each other's, strengths and weaknesses, and it's a great experience. And other times, it's a little bit like, marriages, in the sense that you can have people that, do very well in a marriage, and yet they can try and work as business partners, and then the stress of, hey, now it's not only, you see each other at home, but you see each other at work, or same thing with the friends, you see each other after work, and it's strange, or it can work out great. So I think that there's always those people that have biases one way or the other, and you always have to decide which way works best for your business, for your relationship, and which way to leverage it. So definitely makes sense on things learned there.
Yeah.
Second question I always ask is, along your journey, or sorry, not along your journey, but if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Can I give 2 pieces of advice?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Great. So number 1 comes from just how I got my first opportunity to come to Switzerland. I think so many people, when they hear that, are like, oh my God, she's so lucky, or, that would never happen to me, or things like that. And I can't tell you the power of networking and of reaching out to people and just asking for things directly and not beating around the bush. I think that we really underestimate the power of being super direct with someone instead of just kind of like sending in your resume and hoping for the best. Find the side doors, and that's not just for starting a business or getting your dream job. Like, find the side doors to everything. Do you want to start a podcast or write a book or anything like that? I mean, I guarantee you your network is going to have a huge power in helping you get there. And so networking and asking direct questions and reaching out and just asking questions to people you look up to, that would be number 1. And then number 2 kind of has to do with that, but definitely, if you want to start a business, you've got to start building up a voice. And it doesn't matter what platform you use, like whether it's YouTube or podcasting or TikTok these days, or like anything, but just really use the power of online. And that will help you with your network too, because you never know the opportunities that will come out of you telling your ideas and like just talking about it publicly. Because I think a lot of people don't think that they have something to add to the conversation. And I'm here to tell you, literally everybody has an individual voice and everyone has something to add to the conversation.
No, and I think those are both great pieces of advice. And I like the idea of networking. I think sometimes people are hesitant to network, and either it's because you're scared, hey, I'm going to alienate the people in my network, or if I tell them what I'm doing, they're going to feel pressure that they have to support me, or or I'm going to not know what to say, or I'm going to make a fool of myself, right? Any number of hesitations, or to your point, they don't have something to add or anything of that. And I think that holds you back from utilizing what is one of your greatest assets. If you know a lot of people that can give you ideas, that most people are pretty willing to bounce ideas off of, give you input, give you feedback. If they know someone, make a connection, help you out where they can, and it can make a much bigger effect on your business and and your success if you're willing to overcome that fear that sometimes people have. So I think that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, as we wrap up, if people want to get a hold of you, they want to be a client, a customer, they want to be an investor, they want to be an employee, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out, connect up, and find out more?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a website, impressum.com, or we have a LinkedIn page, IMPRESM. We also have Instagram and Twitter at Let's Impressum. And my name's Ali Marchand. I'm on LinkedIn or Instagram or even TikTok, and I try to answer all of my DMs. I love talking to people about their ideas and things like that. I have gotten so many of them, and I just really love it. So you're welcome to reach out to me.
All right. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, connect up, find out more, and definitely a great resource there. Well, thank you again, Ali, for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, feel free to go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be a guest on the show. We'd love to hear from you. 2 more things as a listener. 1, make sure to click subscribe in your podcast player so you know when all of our awesome episodes come out. And 2, leave us a review so other people can know when all the awesome episodes come out. Last but not least, if you ever need any help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your business, go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always happy to help. Thank you again, Ali, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks so much, Devin. This is great.